My name is Sophia. I am 15 years old, and last month my dad sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Your college fund is gone. I had to use it for the family." "See, you'll understand when you're older," he said with a tired sigh, sliding an empty bank statement across to me. "We needed it more than you need college. You're smart. You'll figure something out. Scholarships exist for a reason. Gone." That was his word, not an apology. I stared at the statement showing a balance of zero point 0.0, where there should have been $127,000. Not a discussion beforehand, not a plan for how I'd actually pay for college, not even guilt in his voice. Just a printout, a shrug, and the expectation that I'd accept this because family comes first. "What did you spend it on?" I asked, my voice shaking. "That's not your concern," he said flatly. "Adult decisions require adult money. You're 15. You don't get to question how I manage family finances." Adult decisions. Like that justified stealing 4 years of tuition that my grandparents had saved for me since I was born. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Grandma and Grandpa saved that money specifically for my education. It was in a trust. With me as trustee," he interrupted, "which means I have legal authority to use it as I see best for the family. And right now, the family needed it more than you need Princeton or wherever you think you're going." Princeton. I'd been working toward Princeton since 6th grade. Perfect grades, debate team captain, volunteer work, everything. My grandparents had promised me that if I got in, the money would be there. Now it was gone, and my dad was acting like I was selfish for caring. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the statement in his face and demand he fix this. Instead, I picked up my phone, opened my notes app, and started typing. Date, October 15th. Dad informed me college fund, $127,000, is gone. Refused to explain what it was spent on. Said I don't get to question adult decisions. Told me to figure something out for college. Because if my dad thought he could just take my future and tell me to accept it, he was about to learn that 15-year-olds have Google, access to bank records, and a lot more power than he realized. Do you want to know how discovering my college fund was empty turned into a 6-month investigation that exposed my dad's gambling addiction, secret second family, and financial crimes that sent him to prison? Stay to the end, and you'll see exactly how I turned one bank statement into evidence that destroyed the lie he'd been living. The first thing I did was stay calm, unnaturally calm. My dad was watching me, waiting for tears, or yelling, something he could dismiss as teenage drama. Instead, I nodded slowly. "Okay, I understand." His shoulders relaxed. "Good. I'm glad you're being mature about this." "Can I keep this?" I held up the bank statement. "Sure. Not like it matters now." I took the Gazette's paper, folded it carefully, and walked upstairs to my room. Closed the door, sat on my bed. Then I opened my laptop and started digging. The trust fund had been set up by my grandparents when I was born. My mom's parents, who died in a car accident when I was 12. The money was supposed to be untouchable until I turned 18, except for verified educational expenses with documentation. My dad was listed as trustee after my grandparents died, but there were supposed to be restrictions, rules, oversight. I found the original trust documents in my mom's filing cabinet. She'd kept copies of everything. Read through 15 pages of legal language I barely understood, but I understood enough. The trust specified that funds could only be used for GD 1, tuition and educational expenses, with receipts. 2, medical emergencies, with documentation. 3, housing if I became a legal adult before 18, nothing about family needs. Nothing about trustee discretion for non-educational spending. My dad had stolen from a restricted trust. Not just spent unwisely, stolen. I took photos of every page, uploaded them to 3 different cloud accounts, started a folder labeled Evidence. Then I checked the transaction history on the trust account. I still had access from when my grandparents had shown me the balance on my 14th birthday, wanting me to understand what they'd built for me. The password still worked. I logged in and started scrolling through transactions. What I found made my hands shake. The withdrawals had started 3 years ago, right after my grandparents died. Small at first. $2,000 here, $3,500 there, labeled educational expenses and school supplies. But I'd been in public school. No tuition, no expensive supplies. Then they got bigger. $8,000. Educational consultant, $12,000. SAT prep program, $15,000. Academic summer camp. I'd never had an educational consultant. Never attended an expensive SAT prep program. Never went to academic summer camp. All fake. All lies to justify withdrawals. And in the past 6 months, the amounts had exploded. $25,000, March 15th, $30,000, April 3rd, $40,000, May 12th, $32,000, September 28th. The most recent withdrawal, 2 weeks ago, had drained the last of it. The description just said, family emergency, medical. There was no family emergency. No one was sick. I screenshot every transaction, every fake description, 3 years of systematic theft documented in my cloud folder. Then I did something that changed everything. I Googled my dad's name plus legal records. Found a civil lawsuit filed against him 4 months ago. A creditor trying to collect $67,000 in gambling debts. Gambling debts. I searched deeper. Found his name on a banned players list for 3 different casinos. Found a personal bankruptcy filing from 2 years ago that had been dismissed. Found a marriage certificate, filed 8 months ago, to a woman named Jennifer Torres. Not my mom. I stared at the screen, not breathing. My dad was married to someone else, while still married to my mom, which meant he had 2 families, 2 households, 2 lives, and he'd been funding his second life with my college money. I saved everything, every document, every record, every piece of evidence. Then I called the one person I knew I could trust. My mom was a nurse, working the night shift at County General. She didn't get home until 7 a.m., exhausted and running on coffee. I was waiting at the kitchen table, laptop open, documents printed and organized in folders. Sophia, why are you up so early? And why do you look like you haven't slept? Sit down, Mom. There's something you need to see. She sat, coffee cup in hand, eyes concerned. What's wrong? Dad told me yesterday that my college fund is empty, that he spent it on family needs. Her face went pale. What? I turned the laptop toward her, showed her the bank statement, the transaction history, 3 years of fake expenses. $127,000. Gone. Mom's hands started shaking. He said he was managing it, that everything was fine, that the money was growing for your future. He lied. I pulled out the next folder. And it gets worse. I showed her the casino bans, the gambling debt lawsuit, the bankruptcy filing. Her coffee cup clattered onto the table. Oh my God! Mom, there's more. I showed her the marriage certificate. She stopped breathing, just stared at the document showing her husband's name next to another woman's. He's married to someone else? 8 months ago. Her name is Jennifer Torres. They have an apartment together in Riverside. I found the lease agreement. My mom stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Where did you get all this? Public records, Google, the trust account I still had access to? Mom, I think he's been living 2 lives. Us here and her in Riverside, and he's been using my college money to pay for both. Mom walked to the sink, gripped the edge, and I watched her shoulders shake. Mom? I knew something was wrong. The late nights, the work trips, the way he'd get defensive when I asked about money. But I thought I was being paranoid. She turned around, tears streaming. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I should have protected that money. I should have been paying attention. This isn't your fault. He's the one who stole it. What do we do? I pulled out my phone. We call a lawyer, and then we call the police. The lawyer's name was Patricia Morrison. She specialized in trust fraud and family law. We sat in her office at 9 a.m. I'd skipped school, Mom had called in sick, and laid out everything. Patricia read through the documents for 20 minutes in silence. Finally, she looked up. This is clear-cut embezzlement from a restricted trust. Your father falsified expense claims to steal money that was legally protected for Sophia's education. Can we get it back? I asked. We can try. We'll need to sue him for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. We'll also need to report this to the police. This is criminal, not just civil. What about the other marriage? Mom asked quietly. That's bigamy, also criminal. If he married someone else while still married to you, that's a felony in California. My mom covered her face with her hands. Patricia's voice softened. I know this is overwhelming, but you have something most victims don't have: extensive documentation. Sophia's evidence is meticulous. The transaction records, the fake expense descriptions, the marriage certificate, the gambling records. It's all admissible. How long will this take? I asked. Months, maybe a year. But I'm confident we can prove what he did. The question is whether there's any money left to recover. What do you mean? If he's spent everything, there may be nothing to get back. We can get a judgment against him, garnish wages, seize assets. But if he's broke, there's a limit to what we can recover. I thought about Jennifer Torres, the apartment in Riverside, the gambling debts. I think there might be assets we don't know about, I said. Can we investigate his finances? Once we file suit, we can subpoena bank records. We'll see where the money went. Mom signed the paperwork to retain Patricia. Then we drove to the police station. Detective Chen from the Financial Crimes Unit took our statement. He reviewed the evidence, the trust documents, the transaction history, the fake expense claims. This is pretty straightforward embezzlement, he said. Trustee who falsified records to steal from a restricted account. How much total? $127,000 over 3 years, I said. And you're 15? Yes. He looked at my mom. Did you know he was doing this? No, he told me he was managing it properly. I trusted him. Her voice broke. We'll need to investigate. I'll request full bank records for him and the trust. We'll trace where the money went. If we find evidence of fraud, which it looks like we will, we'll file charges. What about the bigamy? Mom asked. Detective Chen's eyebrows went up. Bigamy? I showed him the marriage certificate. He let out a low whistle. Okay, that's a separate charge. We'll need to verify that he's still legally married to you and that this second marriage is valid. But if both are true, that's a felony. What happens to him if you find evidence? I asked. Depends on the charges. Embezzlement of this amount, plus bigamy, plus fraud, he's looking at serious prison time. Probably 5 to 10 years. My mom started crying. Not sad crying, something else. Relief, maybe, or grief for the marriage she'd thought she had. Detective Chen slid a box of tissues across the table. I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. People who steal from their own children need to face consequences. We filed the police report, gave them copies of everything. Then we went home. My dad wasn't there. He was at work or with Jennifer Torres. I didn't know anymore. Mom packed his things while I watched. Clothes, toiletries, personal items, everything into suitcases and boxes. When he gets home, I want him out, she said. I don't care where he goes, but he's not staying in this house. I helped her carry everything to the garage. At 6:47 p.m., we heard his car in the driveway. My dad walked in through the garage door, saw the suitcases, and froze. What's going on? My mom's voice was ice. You're leaving, tonight, right now. Claire, what? I know about Jennifer. I know about the bigamy. I know you stole Sophia's college fund to pay for your second life. We filed a police report, a lawsuit, everything. His face went from confused to pale in seconds. Who told you? I did, I said, stepping into view. I found the bank records, the marriage certificate, the gambling debts, everything. He looked at me like I'd betrayed him. You went through my private financial information? It wasn't private. It was my college fund. My money. And you stole it. I'm your father. I made a decision for the family. You made a decision for yourself, for your gambling problem, for your second wife, not for me, not for mom, for you. My mom stepped between us. Get out. Now, before I call the police. This is my house. It's in my name. My parents left it to me. You have no legal claim to this house. Get out. For a moment, I thought he might argue, might try to justify it all again. Instead, he grabbed his keys and walked out. Didn't even take the suitcases. Just left. The door slammed, his car started, and he was gone. Mom sank onto the couch and cried for an hour. I sat next to her, holding her hand, feeling nothing. Not sad, not relieved, just empty. My future had been stolen. My family had imploded, and the dad I thought I knew had turned out to be someone completely different. But I'd done something he hadn't expected. I'd fought back, and I wasn't done yet. The investigation moved fast. Within 2 weeks, Detective Chen had subpoenaed all my dad's bank records. What they found was worse than anyone expected. My dad hadn't just stolen my college fund. He'd taken out credit cards in my name, forged my signature on loan applications, used my social security number to open accounts. Total identity theft, $43,000 in debt attributed to me. A 15-year-old with $43,000 in credit card debt and defaulted loans. My credit score was 497 before I even had my driver's license. This is financial abuse on top of embezzlement, Patricia said when she saw the records. He's been systematically destroying your financial future to fund his addictions and second family. The police added identity theft charges, fraud, forgery. The case was building. Meanwhile, Mom filed for divorce and an emergency restraining order. My dad was banned from contacting either of us or coming within 500 feet of our house. He violated it 3 times in the first week. Showed up at my school, trying to talk to me in the parking lot. Security called the police, came to the house at 2 a.m. pounding on the door. We called 911, sent dozens of texts from different numbers, alternating between apologizing and threatening. Each violation added to his charges. And then we found Jennifer. Patricia hired a private investigator to locate Jennifer Torres and find out what she knew. Turns out Jennifer had no idea my dad was already married. He told her he was divorced, showed her fake paperwork, brought her to the Riverside apartment he'd rented with my college fund money. When the investigator showed her the evidence, the real marriage certificate to my mom, the timeline, the stolen trust fund, she was devastated and angry. She filed for annulment immediately. Then she agreed to testify against him. He told me he was a widower, she said in her deposition, that his wife had died and he was raising his daughter alone. He showed me pictures of Sophia and said you were his whole world. I thought I was helping him build a new life. Instead, he'd been using her, too. Jennifer turned over financial records showing my dad had spent over $80,000 on her and their apartment. Furniture, trips, rent, all funded by my college money. She also revealed something we hadn't known. He'd proposed to her with a $12,000 engagement ring, purchased 3 days after draining the last of my college fund. The investigator found the receipt, added it to evidence. By the time we went to trial, the case against my dad was overwhelming. Embezzlement from restricted trust, $127,000. Identity theft, $43,000 in fraudulent debt. Bigamy, second marriage while still married, fraud, fake expense claims, forged signatures, restraining order violations, 3 documented incidents. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. Patricia refused. Your client stole his daughter's future to fund a gambling addiction and secret family. We're going to trial. The trial took 3 weeks. I testified on day 4. Walked through finding the empty account, discovering the transactions, uncovering the fake expenses. My dad's lawyer tried to make it seem like I was a vengeful teenager who didn't understand finances. Isn't it true you've always been resentful of your father's authority? No, I was resentful that he stole $127,000 from me and told me to figure it out. Isn't it true you accessed private financial accounts without permission? I accessed my college fund that my grandparents set up for me. It wasn't private. It was mine. Did you ever consider that your father might have had good reasons for his financial decisions? Gambling debts and a secret wife aren't good reasons. The prosecutor stood up. Objection. Counsel is badgering a minor who is the victim of her father's crimes. The judge agreed. Mom testified. Jennifer testified. Detective Chen walked the jury through the evidence: the bank records, the fake expense claims, the forged signatures, the credit cards opened in my name. My dad took the stand in his own defense, claimed he'd made mistakes, but never intended to hurt anyone, that the gambling was under control, that Jennifer was a misunderstanding, that he'd planned to pay back the college fund eventually. The prosecutor destroyed him in cross-examination. You stole $127,000 from your daughter's education fund, correct? I borrowed it. You falsified expense claims to hide the theft, correct? I was going to replace it. You opened credit cards in a 15-year-old's name without her knowledge, correct? That was a mistake. You married another woman while still married to your wife, correct? He had no good answers. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was a woman in her 60s who looked at my dad with open disgust. Mr. Chen, you systematically betrayed your daughter's trust, stole her educational future, destroyed her credit before she was old enough to drive, and committed bigamy to fund a double life financed by gambling and lies. You've shown no genuine remorse. You've blamed everyone but yourself. My dad started to speak. The judge cut him off. I'm sentencing you to 8 years in state prison. You'll pay full restitution of $127,000 plus the $43,000 in fraudulent debt, plus interest and legal fees. You're permanently banned from serving as trustee or having access to any minor's financial accounts. And you'll register as a financial criminal. 8 years. I watched them handcuff him. Watched him look at me one last time. Not with apology, but with blame. Like this was somehow my fault. I looked back and felt nothing. He'd made his choices. Now he'd live with them. The money recovery took longer than the trial. My dad's assets were minimal. He'd spent or gambled most of everything. The Riverside apartment was rented, not owned. His car was leased. But the court seized what they could. His retirement account, $34,000. His tax refund, $32,900. His personal belongings, sold at auction, $12,800. Jennifer voluntarily returned the engagement ring, $12,000, though she'd already tried to sell it. Total recovered, $52,000 of the $127,000 stolen. The rest would come from wage garnishment, 25% of anything he earned, in prison and after. At minimum wage prison jobs, that would take 20 years. I'd probably never see all of it, but I'd seen enough justice to start healing. The identity theft was harder. Patricia worked with credit bureaus to prove the fraud, remove the debts from my record, and restore my credit. It took 8 months, but eventually my credit report showed what it should have all along: no history, because I was a minor when the fraud occurred. Clean slate. Mom and I rebuilt, slowly. Therapy, twice a week. Learning to trust again. Processing the grief of losing the family we thought we had. On my 16th birthday, I received a letter from Princeton's admissions office. Early decision acceptance. Full financial aid package. They'd read about the case in the news, verified the trust fund theft, and determined I qualified for maximum assistance. 4 years, fully covered. I cried reading it, called my mom. We cried together. Your grandparents would be so proud, she whispered. I wish they were here to see it. Me too, baby, me too. It's been 2 years since my dad told me my college fund was gone. I'm 17 now, starting Princeton in the fall. The $52,000 we recovered is safely invested for graduate school, managed by a professional trustee with Mom and me both having oversight. No more family members handling money alone. My dad writes letters from prison sometimes, long, rambling things about how I destroyed his life, how he was doing his best, how I'll regret this when I'm older and understand real sacrifice. I don't read them anymore. Patricia taught me I don't have to. Jennifer reached out last year, apologized for being part of the situation, even unknowingly. We had coffee once. She's rebuilding too. Different paths, same betrayal. Mom is dating again, carefully, with boundaries, learning that trust isn't weakness. Trusting the wrong person is. Last month, I gave a talk at my high school about financial literacy and protecting yourself from family fraud. If someone tells you to trust them without showing you documentation, that's a red flag, I said to a room full of freshmen. If someone says you're too young to understand your own money, that's a red flag. If someone refuses to explain where money went, that's theft, not family. 3 students came up after, said their parents were acting secretive about college funds, asked how to protect themselves. I gave them Patricia's card. Because here's what I learned. Predators rely on victims staying quiet. They rely on shame and family loyalty and the idea that questioning parents is disrespect. But questioning isn't disrespect. It's survival. My dad thought he could take my future, tell me to figure it out, and I just accept it because he was my father. He was wrong about me being helpless, wrong about me staying silent, wrong about family loyalty, protecting him from consequences. And that mistake, that underestimation, cost him everything. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment about where you're watching from. And if someone in your family is being secretive about money that belongs to you, get documentation. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. Subscribe for more stories. Because sometimes the people who are supposed to protect your future are the ones stealing it. And sometimes the bravest thing a teenager can do is refuse to accept betrayal as adult decisions. My name is Sophia. I'm 17 years old, and I'm the girl who turned an empty bank statement into evidence that sent my father to prison and got me into Princeton. And I'd do it again, every single time.